As with the criteria section itself, my main advice here to make this even better would be to consider visual opportunities and options to enhance meaning and or organization and presentation of the information in all the criteria ranges in these sections. Right now we are comparing and contrasting the function of online visual devices through only textual means in this report and not tapping into any visual means in this section yet, which would probably do a much better job at some of these explanations at least and work extremely well in concert with the text already provided in those sections we just scrolled through. Well, here are some of those visuals once we get to the recommendation section. Yes, we have a comparison table or chart that helps us get a better picture of how the two navigation choices compare against one another in the criteria. Imagine, for example, if more of those sorts of visuals were incorporated into earlier sections. Can you even try to get a picture of this or a mental picture of this without this chart, trying to keep this straight in your head? Likewise, as we scroll down, we have a visual image of a drop-down navigation tool in action here from a mainstream sports website. And yes, we even have the findings of an informal class survey in a pie chart. And then, wow, on the last page, we get even more visuals, this time of what I'll refer to as these are heat maps or usage maps that suggest, like the surveys of the class, that web users prefer to use drop-down menus to navigate over sidebar menus. I also like that the writer is experimenting with page layout here, but this writer probably needs to work a little bit more on that. Still not bad for this point in her or his development as a business communicator. So before my overall comments, let's work our way to the document end. Up next, and following the last page of the body, is usually the citation page. Here it is a references page in APA. It looks pretty solid. And then this writer actually has a glossary, as I mentioned earlier, in the end matter. A glossary can be placed either in the front or end matter, and here the writer has chosen to place it in the end matter. I believe because there were only a limited number of audience members who would actually need to access it. The vast majority were subject matter experts who definitely did not need to have any of these things defined. My one bit of advice about anything you place in your reports as end matter this semester or at any point is that you find a way to let your readers know that the material is there, what it offers, and why it might be of value to them. Usually this information can be placed in a foreword or in the introduction, but I have also seen it successfully incorporated within the body itself when appropriate. For example, if you are discussing a study you did and mention that the entire findings of the study are available in Appendix B, for instance, in the body text or a footnote, etc. If you do not let the audience know the information is in an appendix or other end matter, then they are not likely to utilize that information, even if it would be of value to them. So please do keep that in mind if you include end matter. Okay. Before I make general comments, you should also know that you will need to preface the analytical report with a cover or transmittal memo that, unlike the report itself, which is written to the audience groups you will define in your proposal, will be written directly to your instructor to remind him or her of the rhetorical situation you are writing to. In this case, the scenario you proposed and were given approval for, and the rhetorical strategies, choices, and techniques you employed while writing the report to address the rhetorical situation and situational demands. This will be similar to the cover memos you will be writing and turning in, along with all of your major assignments, with the single exception of the proposal. I would say overall, this is a very, very sound analytical report. And as I mentioned earlier, it really is a good example because it deals with both products and processes when analyzing its alternatives, as most of you will be doing one or the other of those things in your own reports. The strengths of this report are basically its informative content, its overall structure, its cohesion, except for the alternatives intro thing, and that it really does a thorough job analyzing these two navigation systems. If you read through this, I know you don't have time to do that, but if you do, you would see that it does a very good and thorough job at that. As a reader, I do walk away pretty convinced that the writer is recommending the better system here. The weaknesses are mostly inconsistencies with the application of rhetorical and design approaches and techniques. For example, the use of visuals is strong in the recommendations section of this report, but literally non-existent in other places where it could have been perhaps most helpful. The alternative comparison sections, for example. Likewise, the writer does a great job with structure and using multiple levels and headings throughout most of the document, but completely abandons that use of almost any type of structural aids in the recommendation section where the writer does such a good job with visuals. In that section too, we find that there is new evidence such as the usage maps and also the survey that are introduced. There is considerable new evidence introduced that wasn't previously discussed in the report. And the recommendation section is a pretty late section to do that in. And the recommendation section is late in the report to do that. Although I just listed more weaknesses than strengths, perhaps, this writer did a really good job with this report. And when you go to put your own report together, looking to the first and second level structures in this one might help you to initially visualize what your own analytical report might look like when you begin drafting it. That, and as we will be checking out and critiquing websites in our group projects later on in the semester, this will hopefully serve as a good segue to help us transition into our evaluation of those websites from a business and usability perspective. I know this is almost way too much to digest if you're looking at this early in the semester, and much of this might not make too much sense unless you are opening this up for the second or third time as you are drafting your reports. With that in mind, if this is your first time through these videos, please do remember that they are here and revisit them as you move forward with your projects, especially as you are drafting them.